Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Manya, and today I want to talk to you about the logistics of moving to Japan. So if that interests you, stick around. We're getting into it right now. Okay, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Manya, and I'm moving to Japan today is Friday. I step on the plane in about 2.5 days. I'm currently at the amazing Home2 Suites in Irving, Texas, which is right by DFW Airport. So on Monday morning, we'll be ready just to take the rental car back and head to the airport. That means that if you watch my last video, which was a packing video, I have since moved out of that house and into this hotel, and we've spent 2 nights here. I'm going to start with why our move, mine and Danny's, is different than most people who are going to move internationally or to Japan. Our timeline, what went right, what went wrong, which is a lot, lessons learned, and then how we're coping, specifically how I'm coping, because I can't speak to how he's coping. But let me just say it has been a week. Part 1, why our move is different than most people's, is because we're moving for my husband's employer. He works for a large defense contractor, and so we're not having to go through the normal steps of getting visas. We are going under something called a SOFA, which I believe stands for something for something. I can't remember, but suffice it to say, it's an agreement between the United States government and the Japanese government. And the SOFA status is why I had to get married. If you've watched a previous video, I think it's part 3 of I'm Back, Danny and I were not planning on getting married to go to Japan. We have been dating for about 1.5 years. Fate and life intervened, and the Japanese government, which is quite traditional, said she can't come with you under your status as a dependent if you are not married. So unlike most people, we do not have to apply for visa status. We have a one-way airplane ticket from DFW Airport all the way into Nagoya on Monday, May 15th. By the time you see this, I will already be there. And we don't know any times that we're coming back. My husband's employer will pay for 1 trip back a year, and then of course the final flight when we move back to the US. But yes, we are on a one-way trip to Japan. So that's very, very different. Part 2, timeline. If you've watched my previous videos, you know that back in October of 2022, Danny was going to lunch with a friend. Hey, Kimmy. Nice to see you if you're watching. And they picked up a 3rd friend, and that 3rd friend said, "Oh, I have to find someone for the Japan rotation." And Danny's ears perked up, and he texted me and said, "Do you want to move to Japan?" And I said, yes. He applied within a week or 2 back in October, and then absolutely nothing happened from October to January of 2023. And although that was only about 2.5 months, that was a crazy 2.5 months for us, because we started emotionally preparing to go to Japan without knowing if we were actually going to go. We watched tons and tons of YouTube videos on living in Japan, moving to Japan, what Japan is like, the city of Nagoya, what that was like. And I just started figuring out, well, all the logistical things I would need to do once we knew, but I didn't do any of them because nothing was happening. And then in January, his application started moving forward through the system. And then finally he had an interview, and then like 3 weeks later, they told him he had it, and then 3 weeks, suffice it to say, nothing moved quickly. And then all of a sudden, everything was moving all at once. And that has been the hardest part of all of this, because there was very little that we could do to prepare in advance because I didn't want to start the ball in motion of things that should only happen if we were moving internationally. That said, by the time we found out that we were going to the day that we step on the plane was very, very fast. It feels like about a month. I think it was more like a month and a half to 2 months. But all the things logistically that we had to do really take more time than we were given. What went right? Well, for a while it felt like everything was going right. Once things started happening with the application, he had the interview and he was offered the job and things just sort of started falling into place. I had applied for a position, a promotional position at the city where I work, and I got an interview, but I did not get the job. And that felt like a sign that we were supposed to go to Japan. And so for a very brief while, it felt like everything was working out. And it still, I suppose, does. It's just that very quickly, everything started to feel very, very hard. So I have a list here on my phone that I'm referring to of all the logistical things that had to happen, and I'm just going to run through them. We kept saying through this whole thing, we need to be writing these things down, because I think what we expected Danny's employer to provide for us versus what actually happened were very different things. I think I expected a list from them of all the things we needed to complete, and that never really happened. They have sort of a relocation company, a third-party company, and there is a woman who is managing our relocation. So she manages other companies that deliver services to us. To give you an example, we had a moving company come this week and spend 3 days packing everything in the house. All the household goods, and then some of the stuff in Danny's shop. She coordinated them in theory. And then on the other end, there is a company in Japan that once we find a place to live, will take all the stuff that was shipped and deliver it to our apartment. And then there's also the same company that's here is managing our stuff that's going into storage for 2 years. There's about 2 or 3 different companies managing all of our stuff under this one overarching woman. She's also managing things like we had to get a hotel because they packed our stuff in our bed, and they packed it 5 days before we were supposed to leave town, so we needed a place to stay. She's also managing the rental car for us. But even though she's managing it, she's really just giving permission. So every time she says, yes, you can stay in a hotel, we then have to call and set up the hotel. And that was like 3 different things because the date kept moving. And then the rental car we had to do ourselves. So although she's managing it, we still have to do the majority of the work. And I found that I had to keep pushing on various companies. They would say, Danny has a couple of really large a really large mirror, like one of those huge ones that leans against the wall. Well, that had to be specially crated, but the moving company didn't do the crating. So then I had to push on, well, when's the crating company coming? Because the movers are almost done. And so I found myself constantly like on email pushing these various companies. And one of the issues with the woman who's managing the entire process for us is she's in Singapore. And Singapore, I think, is 13 hours ahead of Fort Worth, if I'm not mistaken. Tokyo is 14 hours. I think Singapore is 13 hours, but don't quote me on that. And so if I didn't email at exactly the right time, it would feel to me like she wasn't getting back to me for 2 days. So I have an app on my widget on my phone that tells me the time in Tokyo and the time in Dallas, and I am like tracking those because at any moment I might need to figure out if I have to communicate with someone in Japan. Also in Japan is a relocation specialist who is going to take us around to look at apartments because Danny's employer pays for housing, which is amazing. It's amazing to be able to move somewhere and not have to pay for housing and utilities and have someone take us around and show us apartments. But that was also more logistics. he started sending us properties to review so that he could get feedback and then figure out where to take us. What else? Oh, and then there's someone at my husband's employer who was managing all of the logistics around getting us there. So that's getting the sofa status, making sure that we had the right date to start work, all of that stuff. And then of course the plane. So getting the date for him to start work, we didn't have that for a really, really, really long time. It was difficult to do logistics not knowing when we were going to go. There was a mid-May. Mid-May was sort of what everyone was saying for a long time. But without a date to drive to, we didn't know when the closing date for the house should be or when we should sell our cars. And so there was a lot to do, but I sort of felt like I was in suspension for a while. Like I knew all the things I needed to do, but I couldn't pull the trigger on doing them. And that was probably the hardest part of the whole process, because by the time everything was clear, everything was at the last minute. Here are the logistical things that we had to do. And before I get to that list, I'll just say this. I've moved a lot in my adult life. I've lived in 5 different states. One of those states twice. So I've lived in, since I became an adult, I've lived in Oregon, California, Nebraska, the District of Columbia, and Texas. I've moved every probably 3 to 4 years, the last 15 years. I know how to move. I thought I had this. I have learned that I have no idea how to move internationally, and the amount of logistics that have to happen in order to make it happen. I am in awe of people who do all of this themselves, because if I had to find a place to live in Japan on top of all of this and manage the rental and the contracts and something called key money and all these things that have to happen, I just don't know that I'd be able to do it very well. So at least the relocation people are handling all of the legal stuff. In no particular order, here are the things that had to be done and are still being done in order to get us there. On a personal side, I had to get out of my apartment early. My lease ran through September, I believe. So I had to work with the complex on the early termination fee, on all the paperwork that had to be done to end my lease early. I had to pack my entire apartment. So I did that quite a while ago because I moved in with Danny probably a month ago. So that part was ahead of the game. So I had to pack my entire apartment, and then he and I had to move my entire apartment to his house because the packers and movers from his employer were not going to come and pack me and move me because we're one family. So we had to move everything to his house. So my stuff has all been packed and moved twice now. Everything in my apartment and everything in Danny's house had to be evaluated to do one of 4 things. This is where the complexity of an international move sort of hit me in the face very early on. Because normally when you move inside the United States, every item has to be evaluated for disposal, donation, pack and move. That's it. And then, of course, a suitcase for the transition, whether it's a drive or a plane ride or whatever. But for international, we had to do disposal, donation, pack and store for 2 years, storage, pack and ship, because they're air freighting all of our stuff over to Japan, or pack and bring on the plane, because we will probably not move into an apartment for at least a month. It will take that long to find a place, buy all the furniture, outfit it and everything. At least a month. They've actually booked us into a hotel for 60 days just in case it takes longer. So our stuff will arrive in Japan and then go into storage again until we're ready to have it moved into our apartment. So each item, 4 different things, and each one had to be dealt with. So I had stacks in my apartment of different piles to do different things, and I did multiple runs to Goodwill, all of that. So that happened pretty early on. Here are some other things we had to do. We needed to get international driver's licenses. I had to pay off my car lease. Danny had a car and a truck. The car he has sold, the truck he is currently using today for the final movement of things to the storage unit, because we had to get 2 additional storage units on top of what his employer would provide for us, partly because we were overweight. They would only give us 16,000 pounds worth of storage, and partly because Danny has things that they would not store. Danny is a builder, a maker. He is a woodworker. He can build or make anything. He's made most recently a table for a charity that I was involved in, and he has a shop, a big shop full of large pieces of equipment like a mill and a sandblaster and a lathe and things that I'm saying words and I have no idea what they are. We had to list and sell the house. The house has sold. Luckily, it took under a month to get the first offer, but they have repairs that they want. So we've had to work on those at the same time, including a total roof replacement. We get a lot of storms here in North Texas, so it's not unusual to have to replace the roof during a home sale, so we're having to do that. I mentioned, I had to give my notice at work and wind that down. I gave about a month and a half notice, although I'm going to be honest, the last 2 weeks I just was not able to be present and I used vacation time for that. I got married, as you know, planned a wedding and got married in 8 days. Packed Danny's house, which to be fair, it was the Packers who did most of it, and they were unreal. Those guys worked so hard, but Danny has a big house with a lot of stuff, and it took them almost 3 days to pack the whole house. And then, like I mentioned, Danny's shop, the 2 storage units. Then we had to do two visits in a month and a half. I don't want to say had to go visit my parents. We were lucky enough to go visit my parents. They live in Oregon, so that was 4 days of really not being able to do much for the transition. And then tonight, hopefully, if Danny and his friends can complete their moves into the storage unit in a timely manner, we will drive down to East Texas to see Danny's family tomorrow. We'll drive down tonight. We have a hotel. We'll stay in that, and then we'll see them tomorrow, and then drive back tomorrow night. We had to host a goodbye party, which I did not. I really just dialed that one in. We just took over a bar that we love, and we said, come see us between this time and this time. We gave people 2 hours. That was the most that I could manage for that. We stocked up on 2 years of clothes and toiletries. There's a lot in that statement, right? So we spent a lot of time, been to multiple stores. We had to get shoes, clothes. Danny in particular really needed to stock up because he's big for Japan. He's not a big guy in the US. He's 5'11", size 9 shoe. Not particularly huge in the US, but he will be big in Japan, and we have been advised that it will be difficult for him to find clothes. So he bought 2 years worth of clothes and shoes and belts and toiletries, that kind of thing. Multiple medical appointments and then subsequent follow-up. So this is one thing I did not anticipate. I did not have a single medical appointment that didn't require some kind of follow-up, 1 or 2. I luckily started those fairly early, but I got to a point where the follow-ups, I was having to beg them to squeeze me in because they were wanting to schedule me after we would already be in Japan. Anything that required mailing us anything or follow-up has just sort of become impossible at this point. So we both filled prescriptions. I got as many exceptions as I could for I only have 1 prescription to try and get like 6 months worth, so I could delay the amount of time I would need to get it done. I got my nails done. I got waxed. I did all the things that make me feel beautiful and make me feel whole, so that I wouldn't have to do them for a little while once we got to Japan. We had to change beneficiaries, change addresses. review possible properties in Japan, fill out endless amounts of paperwork. I've mentioned some of this. Rental car, log into various portals with relocation specialists all over. We had to get new phones and new phone plans. We were both AT&T. I did a ton of research on what to do about the internet and phones. When you go somewhere on a trip, you just call your phone company, and many times you can just add a $10 a day plan, international, and for the 2 weeks you're gone, that's fine. When you move somewhere, it's entirely different. And so I had to really figure out whether we needed Japanese phones that we bought there or whether we did something here. Where we ended up landing was buying unlocked iPhones from the Apple Store and signing up for a phone plan called Google Fi. If you've not heard of Google Fi, I think it's relatively new. It's only a few years old. It's obviously run by Google, and it is a phone plan and internet, and they have great international rates. They're not intended for people who are living overseas, so we'll see how long we're able to use it while we're in Japan, but it'll get us through the first few months. And then of course we had to close utilities on 2 properties, stop trash service, and that was on my apartment, which really was just electricity on my end. Closed down a bunch of streaming services and subscriptions. So for example, I have a Peloton membership that I've had since I think 2018. Peloton, the app, will not work in Japan, so I had to close that. I'm keeping some of my streaming services open now, so I know that Netflix will work. I do not think Peacock will work. That's how I watch my Bravo terrible reality TV shows. But what I can do, well, it's only about $5 a month, so I'm going to give it a shot when we get there. There's apparently a way you can use a VPN to watch American shows. I don't know anything about that, haven't had a chance to figure it out, but I'm leaving that open. Then Netflix, we canceled Danny's Hulu. Hulu will not work over there. YouTube will work, which is good because that's my workout videos. I think I have reached the end of the list of logistics. I'm sure I'm missing some, but that's all I can think of for now. Lessons learned. I have learned that everything takes longer than you think it will, especially the stuff that is trapped in bureaucracy and is still very paper heavy. So I'll give you an example of Danny and I are both having massive issues receiving our titles. I really screwed up big time. Like I said, I paid off my lease. I did that in plenty of time, and I received the title in the mail. So that was all fine. There were explicit instructions on the title, the letter that came with the title, because it was a lease, that I needed to go to, well, they said DMV. Here in Texas, it's DPS, Department of Public Safety, and switch the title over into my name. I did not do that. I ignored it. This is totally on me. No one else but me is responsible for this. So I had the title. I thought I was good. I signed the back of it. I went to CarMax. I received an offer. I handed them the title, and they said, "We can't take this. The title's not in your name. It's still in the bank's name." So we went to the DPS office. This was all one afternoon. And they then sent us to the county clerk. We went to the county clerk's office, waited in line, got to the window, and the woman said, "Okay, well, we can do this for you, but it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to mail you the title." That was a bad moment because, like I said, it's Friday, May 11th, and this is the end of week 2. So if the title comes today, I can go and sell my car. If the title does not come today, it is going to become a logistical nightmare for, again, my friend. The car is currently at her house. The title is going to go to her house. If it does not come before today, because we will be in East Texas tomorrow and CarMax is closed on Sunday. So if it comes today, all is well and I can go sell it. If it does not come today, I'm going to have to sell the car to her for, nothing, because I'm not actually selling it to her. Then she will have to get the title in her name. Then she will have to sell the car to CarMax, and she will have to figure out how to get the money to me. This woman, I'm telling you all, I know she watches these. She is an absolute saint. I cannot believe that she is doing this for me. I am hoping that the title will come today. I am trying to be patient and let her mail arrive before I bug her wife and ask if the title is there. It has started to feel like absolutely nothing is easy. Nothing is easy. Like I said, every medical appointment had a follow-up. Everything with the car had a follow-up. Every time I thought, okay, this is going to go easy, it did not. So I just started preparing myself for everything to go wrong all the time. Sort of like when we tried to pick up Danny's prescriptions yesterday and they had put in the wrong prescription. And that's going to lead me to my final section. So let's talk about coping and how I'm doing. This week I have not been doing well. This has been a very, very stressful experience. We've been getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning every day and working until 9 at night. And when I say we, I've been trying to do stuff. Yesterday, I sort of ran out of things to do. Like I said, I am at the physical limit of what I can help Danny do because he's now doing very, very heavy things. And I've cleaned the house. The house is clean. The house is ready to go. Mostly I've just been trying to be of service to him, trying to keep him hydrated and fed because he is the type who will just work until he drops. He will not drink water. He will not eat. I just sent him a text like an hour ago saying, hey, remember I left you a protein bar, protein shake, water in the fridge. Make sure you eat it because I'm not there. We have tried really hard to prioritize each other through this and to give each other love and support. We've had some tough moments though, and I think that's understandable. We work at different paces. Remember, we've only known each other since January of 2022. So we've only known each other about a year and a half. We've never been through a really stressful time together. And so what I have learned is that I am a very decisive person. I'm not attached to stuff. I have very little stuff. And so I will just say, okay, I don't need that, I'll throw it away. And I'm brutal because I've moved so much. At the end, I just throw everything away. I mean, you can't. When you're moving by car, you can always shove one more thing in there. But on Monday, when we step on the plane, whatever we have with us is what's going. There is no other option at the end. Danny, on the other hand, it's very important to him to consider everything. He's incredibly methodical. He's thorough. I have never seen a cleaner house than this man. When I say I cleaned, I mean, I didn't really even have to clean that much because he's so clean and precise. You know, he makes sure that airplanes are safe to fly. He builds airplanes. He maintains airplanes. He lives in an engineering world where things are detail-oriented and have to be done really, really precisely and well. And to me, that looks like slow. What to him is doing it right, to me looks like slow. And slow is hard for me. And so we've had some moments where I have been incredibly concerned that we were not going to get everything done. And like I said, this is not a move like I've moved before. I've pretty much always moved by car, and you can delay when you leave in a car. You can take another hour. You can take another day if you have to. We don't have that luxury. 11:55 a.m. on Monday, May 15th, our plane takes off, hopefully it takes off on time. Once that happens, we are unavailable for a very long time in terms of communication, and the world moves on, and we will not be here. We will not be here to clean out one more thing or to pack one more thing. And you get it, I'm going on and on now, but this has created some tension between us because he's working as hard and as fast as his personality will let him. And I have not always been my best self this week. I have been very upset. I have cried a lot. I have been very nervous. The fact that he's at the house today and I'm not there is causing me anxiety, but I have to trust him and his two friends that they will get it done. He knows that when he leaves today, that's it. I mean, we could go back on Sunday, but that is not my hope. I hope we do not have to go back on Sunday. Like I said, I think he needs Sunday to rest. So today is a very critical day. This week has been very hard. I know he's in pain. I've watched him pick things up with his back. He has worked really hard. So this week has been the hardest week of the entire experience. And I think that makes sense. What I said to him yesterday, because we talk a lot. One of the things that we have been committed to since the beginning is talking through issues, making sure that when we have feelings about something that we talk about it and we don't tamp it down. Both of us have been in long-term marriages where things were not talked about and they get stuffed down and people get resentful and they get worse over time. We have said we are not going to do that. That's not easy. But we have tried to do it this week, and you know, one of the things I said to him yesterday, because yesterday was the worst day in terms of how we were talking to each other and how we were treating each other. And by last night we had recovered, and I'm grateful, very grateful for that. But there was a moment when I walked away, got in the car and left. And I wasn't leaving forever. I was going to get gas, but he didn't want me to go and I needed space. So that was the first time in our relationship that we've had that kind of moment. And he was like, I need you to not do that again. You cannot leave. If something were to happen to you, I would hate for that to be the last time I saw you. Like, I couldn't live with that. And my point was, I knew I was fine and I needed space. And we're in a house with no furniture and nowhere to go. And I just needed to get away for a minute. But I heard him, and I will try not to do that again. But what I said to him last night, and what I still believe, is that every emotion we've had this week has been appropriate for the situation. This is hard. This is really, really hard. And we're still learning each other. So we're coping, but it has been a rough week. I am so happy to have this day. I needed this day. I needed to be done with that house. You know, that house means nothing to me. I never really lived there. The only thing it means to me is that I spent the best summer of my life last summer really at that house a lot, hanging out by the pool, and just we had a great summer. So I have some good memories there, but I don't like that neighborhood, the house. I'm a city person. It was too rural for me. So I'm happy to be done with that house. And I'm, again, really hoping we don't have to go back on Sunday. But I'm coping okay. I'm having a lot of anxiety. And, you know, moving to Japan's a big deal. Everyone just wants us to be excited, and I appreciate that. No one wants to hear that this is really hard. In the last 2 months, I have completely given up my career. I'm no longer getting a paycheck. I don't know what I'm going to do with the second half of my life. I am dependent on someone who I trust, but I haven't known for that long. I moved into his house. Now I'm in a hotel. It's a whirlwind, and that's not always positive. There are a lot of scary things about to happen. And I'm just trying to give myself a lot of grace, because I think it's appropriate to be scared and appropriate to be anxious. But it is really hard in a world where people just want you to be positive about everything all the time. So for those of you who allow me to just be myself, I am grateful. But no matter what, we're going to step on that plane on Monday and we're going to Japan. So fingers crossed that everything will happen that needs to happen, and that if it doesn't happen, we will be able to solve it from Japan. Thank you all for your time and for watching. I'm hoping the next video will be of the plane and the incredible business class seats that I'm so excited to experience for the first time in my life. So as always, Thank you for being here and being on this adventure with me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.